Every marriage has a sound. A laugh in the kitchen, a whispered goodnight, footsteps meeting in the hallway after a long day. Mine had one too. It was the sound of my front door closing and another man's footsteps climbing the stairs to my bedroom. I didn't know it then, of course. Back then, I thought I had a good life. A stable home, a loyal wife, a future I had spent 12 years building with my bare hands. But betrayal doesn't arrive wearing a mask. It arrives wearing familiarity. It sits at your table, smiles at you over coffee, kisses you goodbye. And sometimes, it waits for you to leave the house. Act 1. The life I thought was mine. My name is Nathan Holloway, and for most of my adult life, I believed I was one of the lucky ones. I had built a respected logistics company in Charlotte, North Carolina. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid well, and it gave my family everything I never had growing up: security, comfort, and options. My wife, Savannah Holloway, had been with me since I was 28. She was beautiful in the kind of way people didn't forget: honey blonde hair, effortless elegance, a smile that could calm a room. When we met, she was warm, funny, ambitious, the kind of woman who made you want to be better just to deserve her. We had no children, not because we didn't want them. Life just kept getting in the way. First business, then health scares, then timing, then silence. And after a while, we stopped talking about it, because the silence hurt less than the truth. Still, we had built a life that looked good from the outside. A large brick home in a gated neighborhood, weekend dinners on the patio, shared vacations in Napa and Miami, matching coffee cups in the kitchen, coordinated holiday photos. The kind of marriage people pointed to and said, "They've made it." And maybe that was the first lie I told myself, because what people admire from the outside often looks very different when you're living inside of it. Savannah had changed over the last 2 years. Not dramatically, not enough for alarm bells, just enough to make the air feel different. She became more distant, but politely so. More private, but casually so. More polished, more alert, more guarded. She laughed less with me, but more at her phone. She stopped reaching for me in bed. Conversations became practical, efficient, cold without being cruel. When I asked if she was okay, she always gave me the same smile. "I'm fine, Nathan. Just tired." That word, tired, became her shield. Too tired for date night. Too tired for long talks. Too tired to travel with me. Too tired to notice that I was beginning to feel like a guest in my own marriage. Around the same time, we hired a new driver. His name was Derek Lane. He was in his mid-30s, tall, composed, physically fit, and carried himself with the kind of quiet confidence that turns heads without trying. He came recommended by one of my clients, someone who swore Derek was reliable, discreet, and professional. And for a while, that's exactly what he seemed to be. He drove Savannah to charity luncheons, gallery events, salon appointments, and the occasional dinner when I was too busy to join her. He drove me to airport drop-offs on early mornings when I had back-to-back meetings. He kept the cars immaculate. He never spoke too much. He dressed sharply. He always said yes, sir, and of course, ma'am. He was efficient. Invisible. Useful. I trusted him because I had no reason not to. And trust, I learned, is the easiest thing in the world to weaponize against a good man. The first time I felt something real, something heavier than suspicion, was on a Thursday morning in April. I had forgotten my laptop charger and came home 20 minutes after leaving for the office. It was early, maybe 8:15. The house should have been quiet. Savannah had said she planned to sleep in. When I walked in, the downstairs was empty. But I heard movement upstairs. At first, I assumed it was Savannah getting ready after all. I even smiled to myself, thinking maybe I'd catch her in one of her oversized sweaters, half awake, hair a mess, the version of her I missed most. Then I heard laughter. Not loud, not careless. Low, intimate, suppressed. And then, silence. I froze in the foyer with my keys still in my hand. For a second, I actually questioned my own ears. Maybe the television was on. Maybe she was on the phone. Maybe. Then Savannah's voice floated down from upstairs, sharper than normal. Nathan? Not baby. Not your back. Just my name. I forgot my charger, I called. There was a pause. A long one. Then she answered, I'm in the shower. That didn't explain the laughter. I stood there for 3 more seconds, staring at the staircase. Every instinct I had told me to go up. To see. To know. But I didn't. That's the humiliating part no one tells you about betrayal. Sometimes the truth stands right in front of you, and you still walk away because the lie is easier to survive for one more day. So I grabbed the charger from my office downstairs and left. In the car, Derek was sitting behind the wheel of the black Escalade, engine off. He looked up when I came out. Need me to drive you, sir? My stomach dropped so suddenly it felt physical. No, I said. Thought you were off this morning. He held my gaze half a second too long. Mrs. Holloway mentioned she might need me later. I nodded, but my chest was tight for the rest of the drive. That should have been enough. But betrayal never comes with a full confession. It comes in fragments. A scent in the hallway that wasn't mine. A men's watch I didn't recognize on the bathroom counter, gone by evening. Savannah suddenly locking doors she used to leave open. Derek becoming just a little too comfortable in the house. Then there were the changes in Savannah herself. She started wearing perfume at home. Lingerie I had never seen. Lip gloss on days she swore she wasn't going anywhere. A softness in her expression that returned, but never for me. One night, I reached for her hand during dinner, and she moved it to pick up her wine glass. That small gesture hurt more than shouting ever could. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself stress was twisting ordinary things into ugly stories. I told myself successful men get paranoid when they neglect their wives. But then came the phone bill. Savannah and I had separate lines under one account. I never checked them. Never needed to. But one Saturday, while reviewing business expenses online, I noticed a number repeated dozens of times under hers. Midday, late nights, early mornings. I didn't recognize it. I copied the number and sat in my office staring at it for nearly 10 minutes before typing it into a search app. The name that came back was Derek Lane. I remember the silence in that room, how heavy it felt, how final. A person can live through 1,000 anxieties, but there is a terrible stillness that comes only when your worst fear stops being fear and becomes fact. I wish I could tell you I confronted her immediately. I didn't. I watched. I hated myself for it, but I watched. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly shifted my schedule. I canceled 2 business lunches. I used office staff to cover a supplier visit. I left the house at my usual time, drove 3 blocks away, parked, and waited. The first few times, nothing happened. I started thinking maybe the calls were emotional, maybe flirtation, maybe an affair of words, not bodies. Maybe there was still something left to save. Then on a Tuesday morning, at exactly 8:42 a.m., Derek's sedan pulled around the corner instead of toward the garage exit. He parked half a block away. Not in the driveway, not at the side gate. Half a block away. Like a man who had done this before. I watched him step out, glance once toward the street, then walk to my house with a key. A key. My vision blurred. My hands went cold on the steering wheel. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I sat there for nearly 4 minutes, every muscle locked, while my marriage collapsed in real time behind brick walls and white curtains. Then I got out. I didn't storm in. I didn't shout. I moved with a kind of terrifying calm I had never known in myself. I opened the front door quietly and stepped into the house. It was silent downstairs. Then I heard it. A muffled laugh. A low male voice. The soft creak of floorboards above me. My bedroom. Every step up those stairs felt like walking into the grave of the man I used to be. At the top of the stairs, the door was half closed. I pushed it open. And there they were. Savannah, my wife, wrapped in the sheets I had bought in Aspen last winter. Derek standing beside the bed, shirt half buttoned, my robe hanging from a chair nearby. My robe. For one long, unbearable second, nobody moved. Savannah's face drained of color. Derek stepped back. I looked at them, at the bed, at the room, at the framed photo of us from our 10th anniversary still sitting on the dresser like a sick joke. And then, I saw it. On Savannah's nightstand was the watch I had given her on our wedding anniversary. Beside it was Derek's keycard for the garage entrance. 2 lives, side by side. My marriage and her betrayal, resting together like they belonged. Nathan, Savannah started. "Don't," I said. My voice startled even me. It was quiet, flat, deader than anger. Derek tried to speak. "Sir, get out." He hesitated. I took 1 step toward him. "If I have to say it again, you'll leave this house in a way you won't forget." He grabbed his jacket and moved fast. Not a word, not a shred of dignity, just fear. I heard his shoes pounding down the stairs. Then, it was just me and Savannah. She pulled the sheet tighter around herself, suddenly modest after desecrating every boundary we ever had. "It's not what you think," she whispered. I laughed, not because it was funny, because sometimes pain becomes so enormous, your body has no human sound left for it except laughter. "You called him into our bedroom." Tears filled her eyes instantly. Convenient tears, beautiful tears, worthless tears. "Nathan, please let me explain. How long?" She shook her head. "It didn't start the way you think. How long?" Her lips trembled. 8 months. 8 months. 8 months of dinners. Holidays. Public smiles. Shared routines. 8 months of kissing me goodbye with his hands probably still on her skin. I looked around the room and suddenly couldn't stand in it anymore. I backed toward the door. She got out of bed then, sheet wrapped around her body. "Nathan, please, please." I was lonely. That word lit something dark in me. Lonely? I turned back. "You were lonely, so you handed a stranger the keys to my house, my car, my marriage, and my bedroom?" She started crying harder, and then she said the sentence that finally killed everything. "You were never here." There it was. The justification. The polished little knife unfaithful people keep hidden behind their excuses. You were working. You were distracted. You changed. You weren't there. As if absence is adultery. As if neglect is permission. As if pain excuses betrayal. "I was building a life for us," I said. "You were destroying it for entertainment." She flinched. But I wasn't done. "You didn't make a mistake, Savannah. You made a routine, and when I walked out of that room, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The woman upstairs was no longer my wife. She was just the person who had been pretending to be. People imagine betrayal ends at discovery. It doesn't. Discovery is just the first fire. Then comes the smoke. The questions. The humiliation. The inventory of every memory now poisoned by new meaning. I moved into the guest suite that same day. By evening, my attorney had been called. By morning, the locks on my office had been changed, Derek had been terminated, and my security team had disabled every access code tied to him. Savannah spent the next week trying on different versions of remorse like dresses in a fitting room. First came tears, then apologies, then blame, then vulnerability, then nostalgia, then seduction.
Still love you. You pushed me away. Please fix this. Please don't throw 12 years away.
But I had learned something devastating about betrayal. The person who cheats on you doesn't just break trust. They edit history. They force you to rewatch your whole life through a darker lens. That anniversary trip when she said she felt disconnected? Was she already talking to him? That Christmas morning when she smiled at her phone before she hugged me? Was it him? That Wednesday I came home early and she had changed the sheets? Was he there? Every memory became infected, and once memory turns against you, even your own home feels hostile. A week later, I met Derek in person one final time, not by invitation, but because he had the audacity to wait near my office parking garage. When I saw him leaning against the fence, hands in his pockets, I nearly kept walking, but he said my name. Mr. Holloway. I turned slowly. He looked worse than before. Nervous. Hollow-eyed. Ashamed. Good. What? He swallowed. I wanted to apologize. For sleeping with my wife? In my house? He looked down. Yes. I stepped closer. Did you enjoy wearing my trust like that? He said nothing. Did it make you feel powerful? Walking into my home after I left, climbing my stairs, entering my room? He shut his eyes briefly. I know what I did was wrong, no. You know you got caught. That landed. His shoulders dropped. Then, he said something I didn't expect. She told me you two were basically over. I stared at him. He kept going, like a coward confessing just enough to reduce his own guilt. She said you lived separate lives, that the marriage had been dead for years, that she was waiting for the right time to leave. A strange calm came over me. Not because it hurt less, because it clarified everything. Savannah hadn't just cheated. She had rewritten me to another man, turned me into a cold, absent husband in order to justify becoming a liar in her own story. I gave Derek a long look and said, "You weren't special. You were available." He looked like I had slapped him. And then I walked away. Because some men want a fight. But consequences are a better punishment than fists. There is a particular kind of loneliness that follows betrayal. Not the loneliness of being alone, the loneliness of realizing the person who knew your routines, your insecurities, your dreams, your grief, and your softness used that access against you. That is a different kind of wound. I stopped eating right, slept in fragments, stared at walls, missed deadlines, snapped at employees, turned my phone face down whenever friends called because I couldn't stand hearing pity dressed up as support. Men are taught to hide this kind of pain, to be composed. Strategic. Stoic. But the truth is, betrayal unmakes you, not all at once, quietly. It hollows out your confidence, makes you question your judgment, makes you suspicious of kindness, makes you embarrassed by your own sincerity. I remember standing in the master closet one night, gathering Savannah's things for her move to the guest room, and finding a receipt in one of her handbags, a boutique hotel, Dayu Suite. 2 glasses of champagne charged to room service. I sat on the floor holding that receipt for a long time. Not because it was the worst thing I'd found, because it was evidence of joy. They hadn't just sinned, they had celebrated. That realization hurt in a place I don't have words for. The divorce process moved faster than Savannah expected. Her panic became visible when she realized I wasn't threatening to leave, I was actually leaving. That's when the mask finally slipped. "You're being cruel," she told me one evening in the kitchen. Cruel. I almost admired the insanity of it. "You betrayed me for 8 months. You're punishing me." "No," I said. "I'm removing you from the life you abused." She stared at me as if she genuinely could not understand the difference. That's another truth no one talks about. Some unfaithful people don't regret hurting you. They regret losing access to what you provided. The home, the money, the reputation, the safety, the man who loved them more than they deserved. Once I saw that clearly, something inside me started to harden, not into bitterness, but into self-respect. And self-respect is often born in the same place love goes to die. 3 weeks before the divorce hearing, Savannah asked to talk. Not at home, not over the phone. At a quiet restaurant outside the city, the same place we had gone on our first anniversary. I almost refused. But curiosity is sometimes the last thread tying you to a dead relationship. So I went. She was already seated when I arrived. Navy dress. Minimal jewelry. Soft makeup. She looked exactly like the woman I fell in love with years ago. That was deliberate. "Thank you for coming," she said. I sat down, but didn't smile. For a moment, she just looked at me, eyes shining. "I barely recognize you. Maybe now you know how that feels." Her face tightened. Dinner came and went mostly untouched. Finally, she leaned forward. I ended things with Derek. I said nothing. I realized it was a fantasy. A stupid, selfish fantasy. Still nothing. She inhaled shakily. "I know I destroyed us. I know I did something horrible. But if there is even a small part of you that remembers who we were, I'm asking for one more chance." There it was. The final card. Not because she had changed. Because consequences had arrived. I looked at her for a long time. At the trembling hands, the wet eyes, the practiced vulnerability. And I thought about all the mornings I had left my own house while she invited another man into the most sacred room we shared. Not once, not in a lapse, but repeatedly, systematically. With comfort, with permission, with all due respect, I said quietly, "You didn't betray me in a moment of weakness. You built a second life inside my first one." Tears spilled down her cheeks. I continued anyway. "You stood in our kitchen, kissed me goodbye, watched me leave, then called him upstairs. Do you understand what that means? It means the affair wasn't your failure." I leaned in slightly. "It was your character." She broke then, sobbing into her napkin, but I felt no triumph, only closure. Before I stood, she whispered, "So that's it?" I looked at her one last time. "No," I said. "That ended the first time you opened our bedroom door for him, and I walked out before dessert was served." 6 months later, the house was quieter, not emptier, cleaner. The divorce was final. Savannah moved to Atlanta. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Derek had disappeared from her life long before the papers were signed. Apparently, men willing to sneak through side doors rarely stay when real life starts asking questions. The bedroom was repainted, the furniture replaced, the mattress gone. Not because I couldn't afford to keep it, because some things should not survive betrayal. I started therapy. Real therapy. Not the kind men joke about, but the kind that forces you to sit in your own wreckage and tell the truth about what hurt. I traveled less, worked smarter, reconnected with old friends, took up running again, began cooking on Sundays. Small things, ordinary things. But healing is rarely dramatic. Usually it's just choosing not to die inside one afternoon at a time. One evening, I stood on my back patio watching a summer storm roll in over the trees, and for the first time in a year, I didn't feel rage. I felt release. Because the hardest part of betrayal isn't losing the person. It's accepting that the person you loved never existed in the way you believed. And once you accept that, you stop mourning the liar. You start rebuilding the truth. People ask if I hate Savannah. I don't. Hate is attachment with a different face. What I feel now is clarity. She didn't ruin my life. She revealed what didn't belong in it. She showed me that loyalty cannot be begged for, that love without respect is just dependency in a prettier outfit, that being chosen by someone disloyal is not a prize, and being left by someone dishonest is not a loss. The man she betrayed would have done anything to keep her. The man I became after the betrayal would never ask. And that, more than the divorce, more than the evidence, more than the confrontation in the bedroom, that was the real ending. Because in the end, I didn't lose my wife to another man. I lost an illusion. And once an illusion breaks, you can finally see the door that was there all along. So if you're listening to this while your own gut is screaming, while your home feels strange, while the person beside you feels far away, don't ignore what your spirit already knows. Because betrayal loves hesitation. It survives on your denial. It grows in the space where truth should have been faced sooner. I know, because I lived it. I was the husband who waved goodbye, the man who thought hard work was love, the fool who believed routine meant safety. And while I was building a future, my wife was calling another man into our bedroom. But hear me carefully. That was the chapter that broke me, not the story that ended me. Some people lose a marriage and lose themselves with it. I lost my marriage, and finally found the man I should have been all along.